Welcome to another episode of the Tease podcast, where we break down everything that happened each week in marketing, branding, and content. Today, we are going to talk about the controversial Sephora ad that came out this holiday season, talk about ways that you can entertain in your content to increase shares, and break down why subscription boxes are a great way to grow your business. Hi, I'm Joanna Newton, co-founder of Millennial Marketer, an agency that helps creators create their own digital products.
And I'm Michelle Houston, founder of To Be Honest Beverage Company. It's a non-alcoholic functional spirit line, as well as business mentor and consultant. Let's dive in.
Today, I'm sipping on plain water. Very exciting. I think I've told you this, Michelle, but I have some light food allergies, pretty mild food allergies. But over the past couple of weeks, they've been more intense, and I will eat something and have immediate allergic reactions, which is not normal for me. So today I was like, I just need to eat very simply for a few days to get whatever it is out of my system. So water it is.
I love that. Yeah, sometimes you just need to get back to the basics. Just super simple. I have done a lot of that before when I've dealt with digestive health issues and things like that. So I hope you sort it out because that sucks. It's so hard to deal with food stuff. It's just not.
Yeah. And I've always had sort of a very mild, one example is mild nut allergies. It doesn't put me in anything crazy, but I'll have itchy gums or something like that, and then it'll go away pretty fast. But yesterday we got ice cream, and I tried a sample of this sweet potato pie ice cream, and it had a pecan in it, and I ate it, and as soon as I ate it, I got hives and I sweat. I was like, okay, this is extreme.
Wow, that's pretty bad. I'm so sorry. Thankfully, I don't do dairy, and that there was a long time I didn't do legumes, but again, it was all more digestive stuff. It was never a reaction issue. Jeremy, my husband, is actually allergic to poppy seeds of all things.
Oh, that's very random.
Super random. We were at a wedding once and he had a poppy seed dressing. Same thing, broke out into hives and we had to leave. It was a whole deal.
It was the whole thing. I know, it's kind of scary. I mean, luckily mine aren't that intense. I don't have to be hospitalized, but now I'm this is even more intense. We also match again. 2 weeks ago, I think we both wore maroon, and now we're in green and black.
Find it. Just kidding. It's the energetics.
Yeah,
I'm drinking
energetic.
It's the energetics. I'm drinking yerba mate latte. So cashew milk, a little bit of maple, and yerba mate.
Yum. I've never had yerba mate.
It's earthy. It's when it talked about it before. I'm super earthy. I like the mushroom drinks and the matcha and the yerba mate. Very earthy.
All of that. So funny. So I want to start off today with a controversial ad. I feel like since we switched the focus of this podcast, where we provide weekly updates every week with what is going on in marketing, there has been an increase in controversial, offensive ads.
Yeah, either we're paying more attention, so it's the RAS, the reticular activating system, right? So now we're actually seeing red cars because we bought a red car, but it could be, or we're just at a time where that is the new norm. And I think that's part of our conversation we typically have on the podcast is what are the things that people are doing in marketing, advertising, content creation, digital platforms, and how people are getting people's attention and converting them into clients and customers. And so that's, our whole focus. But I do feel like we're at this time. I don't know if it's a universal thing or just a US thing, but things are getting out of hand across the board.
Yeah, things are really getting out of hand. And this week, of all brands to do something problematic, this week it was Sephora. Have you seen the latest Sephora holiday ad?
I have not, no.
So it's kind of wild. So first of all, Sephora got Mariah Carey, who is the Queen of Christmas. There's a whole big deal every year when she defrosts and sings "It's Time" in her whistle tone and says it's Christmas season, right? Because she's one of the biggest Christmas songs of all time. All I Want for Christmas Is You. So the ad is starring her. And it's interesting to say the least. So in the ad, she starts saying it's time, and then freezes because all of her makeup is gone. And she's like, where is it? And an elf is stealing the makeup and running off. And then this elf, she's like, where are you going? Like, it's Christmas. We need you. And the elf says that he's going on strike because of living through past holiday hells, and that him and all the head elf quit, and he's going on strike, and all of the elves are going on strike. And Mariah Carey essentially is like, well, you can't quit and cancel Christmas, and then does her like, it's time chant, and he turns into a snowman and then begrudgingly works. Like, that is the ad.
We're going to have to Google this. We're going to have to Google it and watch it and figure this out. You know what kind of cracks me up? This makes me think of a lot of Super Bowl commercials. You know, when you sit down, you watch the Super Bowl and the commercials are like, and they're their own thing. The companies are spending so much money for such a short period of time to get in front of all of these people who are then, you know, also interested in the ads because it's become like such a thing as the Super Bowl commercial. And you watch some of the ads and you're like, people got paid to come up with this. Like, people actually took time, a long time, a lot of people, tons of resources and lots of money. And this is what they're putting out.
This. And what's so wild to me is I think like mocking boycotting and workers' rights is a really weird topic for a Christmas ad. And then like when you add in like what's going on in the US, and now to be fair to Sephora, I think they probably made this ad 6 months ago, right? They didn't know they would be literally airing it right as tons of Americans were losing like SNAP benefits. And literally people are talking about boycotting Black Friday shopping and Black Friday kind of week shopping because we're in a government shutdown and people aren't getting their benefits and people don't have money to spend on Christmas, right? I realize that 6 months ago, they couldn't have guessed that that is where we were going to be. So I think like the timing of it is like incredibly horrible for them, I think. So that's part of it. And they got Mariah Carey, they made the ad saying like, oh, let's just not run it because of what's going on in the world would have been a tough decision. But I even think the concept conceptually, even without everything that's going on in the world, is like really strange. Like, it's just like a strange topic where I feel like they could have done so many better things that wouldn't have been problematic. And you're right, Michelle, I just don't get it how time and time again they come up with these ads that get this backlash. And the only thing that I can think of is that they know that it's going to get the backlash, but know that the payoff from the conversations is worth it. That's the only thing because I cannot imagine they didn't think about that, right?
The concept that no press is bad press is like any type of attention. But I don't think we're in that era anymore. Like, we are seeing issues with either celebrities or brands that are either going bankrupt or losing brand partnerships, right? Sponsorships and things like that, like as an athlete or as a celebrity, an actress, a musician, etc. There are repercussions to the type of content that's being put out. Whereas I feel like we used to be, the conversation we had last week is that the consumer is driving. The consumer is driving attention. The consumer is driving what is happening. And you can think all you want in terms of like back alley deals and puppet media type deals. And that may still be the case, that there are a select few who are still making moves behind the scenes. But we're in a very different era where the mass of consumers have the control. They have the say. They're the ones who are speaking up. It's like the issue that we brought up with the bakery incident of the influencer and how that influencer was severely impacted and held to a different standard because of audience members and because of the people who are consuming the content. So with an ad like that, it just makes me wonder. I mean, we're headed into holiday season. We're like, Christmas is such a beautiful thing. Mariah Carey, that song, there's so much like emotional storytelling that you could have done that would have been positive. And it makes me think of the Super Bowl commercial deal. It's like Budweiser. So Budweiser always has some type of like horse-drawn carriage with the Clydesdale and the dog. And the sentiment of those commercials is always one of like peacefulness, like American homecoming and family or something of that nature. Same thing with Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola typically has this just like positive, energetic, like, and it brings you to the question of what are you trying to communicate in your marketing? Like, what are you trying to communicate? And what is Sephora communicating by having a setup like that is likely done poorly because it's in such a short period of time? This is not like a full-on movie with like character arcs and where you're not even.
And if it was, Mariah Carey would be the villain. Like if it was a full-on movie with character arcs, Mariah Carey forcing the elves to work so that everyone else can have Christmas would be the villain in that story, which is
like, what were you thinking? What was the directive? And who are you talking to? Like, who are your customers? Who is your target audience? And what are you trying to say to them? And we get lost in the messaging. We get lost in the camera setup. We get lost in where do I have to sit when I'm talking to the camera? We get lost in the script. We get lost in, I have to have the greatest hook. But it usually comes down to, what am I trying to say to the person that I want to say it to? If I just pick one person out of my audience, my ideal client, the person that I want to bring through the door, what am I like communicating to them? Do I want to make them feel bad? Do I want to have them feel guilt? Do I want them to like see this as a struggle, as a pain? Or do I want to inspire? Do I want to motivate? Do I want to make them feel connected to the messaging that I'm putting out? And so I just think, I don't understand. Like, it makes me question. I'm like, why am I not making the kind of money to develop commercials? Because you guys obviously are terrible at it.
It's so bad. So bad. And there's always the reality that media doesn't exist in a vacuum. So you have to, when you're creating things, part of it's knowing your audience and knowing that huge part, but then you also have to take into account what is the overall conversation happening going on in the world, right? And then the time that we're facing right now, you have to keep that in mind. I've seen a lot of local businesses handle this really well. One of my a local supermarket grocery store right now with SNAP benefits going away this month for Americans losing some support when it comes to shopping for groceries, they're like reducing costs on some basic pantry staples and like talking about that and saying like, hey, we'll keep you updated. We're going to reduce costs on these things this week and those things next week so that like you can get through this time. What a great positive way to contribute and promote your business at the same time, right? Because people are going to come in and shop. They can save money on those staples, and then they'll likely buy other things as well. And that's just such a great way to be part of that conversation, rather than hitting people while they're down or essentially mocking people who are unhappy with the way things are. They're coming in and kind of being that pillar of the community. And I think a lot of businesses could be doing that right now, going into the holiday season where money is tight, things are hard. There are, with the government shutdown, there are lots of Americans working with no pay right now. Like, and they're going into the holiday season with that. So if I were a big business or I was a business, my business doesn't really do holiday sales or holiday shopping. We're just not that kind of business. But if I was, I would be finding ways to be showing goodwill, providing discounts where I can, and like helping people, right? Because then they're going to come back to me. And I think a lot of local small businesses have an opportunity this holiday season to essentially save the day, right? So if people are boycotting some of the big box stores or if everything's too expensive, how can you save the day as a small business for your community who might be struggling right now?
Yeah. On the flip side of the advertising scheme is there are some companies that you just feel sometimes they just like do it right. And I've always found that Uber Eats does really, really great commercials. There's actually commercial ones. If you're a Friends fan, I grew up watching Friends. And so like Friends is a big part of my family and our identity in a big way. But Uber Eats did a commercial where Ross ran into Rachel, but in like real life, like Jennifer Aniston and I'm blanking on his name. David Schwimmer, that's what it is.
David Schwimmer, yeah. I was like, what's his name?
They're like on a thing, and he's like, hey, and he like goes in to hug, and she's like, well, like, hi, and he's like, come on, it's me, and she's like, she doesn't recognize him, and that's the commercial where he's like, God, I can't believe it, and she's like, God, that guy is so weird, but Uber Eats, and I think there's one too with the Beckhams. That's a hilarious one. But this commercial this year won an Emmy, and it features Brian Cox, who's like, if you're not familiar, is like, I forget actually what his whole role was and why he's so popular, but he's like an older, kind of stouter, white man. And so he's got, like a white mustache, white hair. And it's kind of set almost documentary style, like storytelling, but he goes back to college. So he like shows up to go to college as a student, and he checks in, and he's of course like everyone else was like in their early 20s or 18, 19, and he's like this older guy, and he has a roommate, and he's just being old and grumpy, and he has all these different interactions of like introducing himself, and then the other students are like talking to the camera like, yeah, Brian's, he's not your typical student, but he's a great guy, and it's this whole thing. But he does it because the advertising is around student discounts for Uber Eats, and it won an Emmy, and you watch it and it's just funny and relatable. It's not like tearing someone down, so it doesn't lead to a sense of like, ooh, that didn't like quite feel right. It's a very approachable topic because it's just about being a student. It's not really like a political or controversial topic. And I think brands have the opportunity to present themselves in a way that people like break down the barrier with the humor component and then connect with them on that like human to human. Like, it's just being a student, like going to school. It's not some crazy adventure with like blowing things out of cannons, or there's no fireworks. A lot of the times there's a lot of like over the top type ads and marketing that again give you that feeling of like, what, why? Like there's no connection. But anything that just comes back down to like storytelling, humor, relatability, and conveys like a very clear message wins. And I think some brands just get it and some don't,
Yeah. Yeah. And to be in those meetings, I think it would be so interesting to just sit in, hear the ideas, hear the ones get thrown out and the ones that are kept, and being able to win an Emmy for your commercial because your story is that good, I think is the thing we should aspire to in our content, right? Like, not obviously, like we're not going to be eligible for Emmys, but when we sit down to connect, to create, to talk about what we do, to take that care and that thought and that understanding of like telling a really good story.
Yeah. And we're actually, like even thinking about it, like there are creator award ceremonies now across the globe that celebrate creators at different levels. And ultimately, like I've seen, your influencer or content creator type where it's just like entertainment value. But then there are other people who have their own products and offer their services, and they do coaching and similarly are getting awarded for the type of content that they're creating. So I think there's opportunity. Another ad that I actually wanted to talk about is the Calvin Klein commercial series. I think, I don't want to pronounce this correctly, but it's Young Hook or Jung Hook. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I've no
Google it. So
yeah.
You remember when, I'm going to forget his name off the top of my head. It was so popular. It was a Calvin Klein ad that came out. He's like in just the white boxer briefs. He is the bear. There's something about the bear.
The bear, like what's his name? He's an actor. The Bear's a really good show.
I'll look it up. So in any case, it's this very sexy Calvin Klein ad with him and like boxer briefs and stuff. So then Calvin Klein, I'm pretty sure it was recently, at least I'm seeing the content around this recently, come out with another ad with this Jung Hook, and he's like a dancer. And it's just like a very cool, edgy vibe, but it's also, very sexy and men. And I think it's interesting because we have previously talked about on the Click Tease podcast. And if you aren't yet, hit subscribe. Every single week, we talk about updates around marketing, personal branding, and content creation. But we've talked about Sydney Sweeney and the abysmal advertising campaign that was jeans. And what was this phrase that she used? What was the thing that was
It was like Sydney Sweeney has great genes.
Has great genes. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that was a colossal fail. Now, the other thing and the tough part about the Sydney Sweeney deal is that it was a slightly over-sexualized advertising campaign, particularly aimed at younger women, right? And so there was a little bit of a disconnect. Now, I do think that we have a bit of a double standard in how women are, quote unquote, allowed to be sexy or seen or over-sexualized versus how men are allowed to be seen sexy, over-sexualized, especially when it comes to clothing. So it's Jeremy something. I swear to God, I've got to Google it. You talk for a second. Hang on.
No, talk for a second about what? That's a lot of pressure. Now I have to talk.
Talk about the double standards for men and women.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate you. Yeah, and I think we see it all the time, right? Like women are expected to be super, super sexy, but not sexy if you're too like there's this really fine line, and men tend to be like they're either kind of very sexualized or this like goofy trope, right? We kind of see those more extremes.
Yeah, we want to fit people into categories. Tangent, Chris Pratt, when he first started in acting, he wanted to do like funny roles, but he was actually ripped and like in good shape at the time and couldn't book or land the roles that he wanted. So when he actually landed Parks and Rec, he had made himself overweight and dumpy in order to get that role. Now, of course, over time, he was more recognized and could curate roles better, so he could integrate humor into being like a ripped, sexier type, handsome man. But we do kind of want to compartmentalize people into these roles. So it's Jeremy Allen White. Jeremy Allen White is the actor who did the Calvin Klein campaign. It was very sexy. It was like a big deal when it came out. And he's like doing push-ups and like running on this roof. And he's just in like white boxer briefs. And we're talking like ripped abs, strong torso, very sexy. Now, people see that advertising and the conversation typically around it is like, oh my gosh, that's so sexy. That's so amazing. We love that. A little bit different with the Jungkook because he's more fully dressed. But he does, I think, have his shirt off at one point. And so it's just kind of like that sexy energy. I don't know. It's just one of those interesting things in terms of response that I feel like, especially within such a short time frame, we're seeing this very different. And Sydney Sweeney is like fully clothed in jeans. Now, of course, the larger conversation is what she said. But just visually, if you're looking at it, people are basically hating on Sydney Sweeney for being over-sexualized in that look, but she's predominantly clothed. And then you look at an advertisement for something like Calvin Klein, where very unclothed, and the response is so different.
Yeah, it's so different. And I think we have like, it's partially due to male, female, like double standards, right? But I also think it's likely to do with the content of the copy. If Sydney Sweeney had done that ad, it was overly sexualized and didn't say what she said, we probably wouldn't have had that conversation. But also, too, like an audience mismatch. American Eagle was often fresh, young, going to, a lot of their looks were more like college age kids and like what might be appropriate to wear at a college campus. And then obviously younger kids buy that, right? A lot of times like what you see in the advertising is really for a younger age. So there's like this mismatch when Calvin Klein, I haven't seen these ads, but they're much more like editorial, highbrow, like,
Yes.
Vogue magazine versus that. So when you have this mismatch and then you add in this double standard, and then when you add in the copy, because the words and the image and the audience all need to go together or else something feels off. And when the words and the images and the audience go together, it's great. And when they don't go together, you have a mess and you can have backlash or an ineffective ad.
Yeah, I think it comes back to, right, is like, who are you? Who are you talking to? And how are you going to communicate that? Like it really, it feels complex and complicated when you sit down and you think about it and you try to take in everything at once. But at the end of the day, again, who is that one person that you're trying to communicate with, and what are you telling them? You know, Calvin Klein is speaking to that edgy, more sophisticated, like elevated type look and feel and vibe, and very cool and very trendy, and how that's communicated. So yeah, super interesting indeed. Do you have anything on content creation this week? I have a couple.
You go for it then. I don't have anything specific.
Okay, so I lost it last Friday when I was going through content. I know that everybody's algorithm is different, but my algorithm right now on social media is off the charts hilarious. Like, hands down, I've always had a love-hate relationship with social media. And if you are someone who is a service-based business owner, a coach, a creator, and you feel like you have to be on social media, but you don't necessarily love it, but you've got to figure out how to make it work, you probably have a similar sentiment of like, oh, I hate that I have to do this and show up and like talk to the camera and do these things and dance, you know, when it was originally transitioning to that. So you can kind of resent social media. And then, of course, there's all the like double standards and things aren't always as they look. And oh my gosh, it's so fake. So there's all that too. I used to feel that way. And now I don't get on social media very often. I get on it specifically to do what we do on this podcast, to look at like what's trending, what's up to date, anything that kind of seems relevant and topical to right now. And while I was doing that on Friday, I could not stop laughing because all of the content was so funny. So I'll let you chime in, and then I have two particular types of businesses right now that I think are crushing it with their content creation that are not content creators or influencers.
Yeah, well, I love it, Michelle. You just kept like sending me, you gotta watch this one. You gotta watch this one. You gotta watch this one. And that's something that, I mean, Michelle's sending that to me to look at for this podcast. But that's something that when you're creating content that you have to think about is like, how do you make something someone will want to share? Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times people they talk about this in the book Contagious that we've talked about on this podcast before, is like, what will people share? Like, what is it that makes someone share something? And a couple of the reasons people share is, one is if like they can like provide some good news to someone, make them laugh. Like that's like a big thing. You want to, it made you feel good. You want your friend to feel good. You want the social capital of being someone that makes someone feel good, right? So how do you create content that people want to share? And I think being surprising, being entertaining, doing something different, doing something like special and unique is what's going to get you. That's part of, there's a lot of that goes into getting people to share things, but that's part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. People there's a certain sense, and in this Contagious book, which is so good. If you haven't read it yet, honestly, I need to reread it because it's been like a year or two. And so people, the social capital that you're talking about, people want to be perceived a certain way. So I like the analogy of cars is if you have a guy who is driving a Ferrari, he wants to be perceived in a certain way. And you think like, oh, that's so ridiculous or okay, over the top or whatever else. But if you have a mom who's driving a safe minivan or some type of SUV vehicle, it's the exact same concept and perception that people want of other people for them. That was a stupid way to say that. But the point is,
I think you got the point across.
I got the point across. People want to be perceived a certain way. The way that we dress, the way we do our hair, our jewelry, our makeup, our cars, our homes, our job. Like there are all these things in which we want people to perceive us in a certain way. And so when people think about sharing content, it's the same thing. They want to be perceived in a certain way. Either they're sharing something funny and they're bringing that joy to someone else. They're sharing something informative so that it tells the other person, hey, I'm in the know about this. And now you know that I'm in the know. Or it's something that like is, a luxury thing, or I don't want to say snooty thing, but like a thing that allows someone else to see them in, again, a certain light. They're perceiving them as someone who is, oh, I'm paying attention to this artwork or this literature, or I am smart or intelligent in this way. That's what they're communicating subconsciously or consciously, which I think is a really powerful thing. So reading that. And I have to know my two things for content creation. You're so bad at segues, Joanna. I got nothing. You're like, oh, what do you have to say? I'm like, I don't know. I just want to talk about one topic and then I'm going to talk about another topic. I don't care how they relate. Okay, so this is back to content creation. So I think that two of the groups that I've seen killing it, not the only ones, but are real estate agents and dealerships. So we're in, again, a place of social media where if you look at content from an educational perspective, now, if you were a real estate agent, you would want to tell people, these are all the technical details of the house. These are the steps that we need to take, blah, 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 blah. But as a consumer, you don't really care about those things. And for each real estate agent, there isn't actually that big of a distinction about their process, the technical paperwork that they have to do, how they're going to move you through it. So what does matter? It matters about their personality, their values, and whether you can trust them or not, whether you relate to them. And this is the crux of personal branding. So real estate agents, there are a couple of instances that I've seen in content creation where they're showing up and being themselves. There was this woman who did this content piece where she is like a little bit more what I would call like dowdy. She's not like a stunner. She's not trying to be anything she's not. She's just like a slightly older, plain Jane type woman. But she's like whispering into the mics and talking about playing hide and seek in the house. Let's see if you can like find me in the rooms. And so then they pan through the room and she's like, I bet you can't tell where I'm hiding. You'd think it'd be behind the curtains. But guess what? And then she pops out and she's like, I'm actually here. And she does that in each of the rooms. But it's so funny. It's so relatable. It got so much freaking traction. And people absolutely loved it because she was authentically being herself and creating content in a way that reflected what it is that she does as a real estate agent, but in a unique, dynamic way. There's another one where there's these two women, where they staged themselves, like paused in a room. Like one of them is like getting out of the shower and the other one's like in the mirror, or they're in the kitchen, like pouring wine. But they're, that challenge. It's almost like the mannequin challenge where they're posed, but the camera is panning around them. So it's showing the dynamics of the space. It's showing them in so that people could relate to being in that space. And it's another way that as a real estate agent, as a very technical thing, they're demonstrating and marketing their personality, the location, and putting the consumer in the place of where they want them to be from a desire perspective in living that life. So that's the type of personal branding and marketing that I think is incredibly powerful right now and that people are connecting with on such a deep and fun level,
Yeah, and it's so interesting to watch when you find these examples of people doing something really cool and creative. A lot of them will have some sort of video formula where they're doing the same concept over and over again, but just in like different locations or different places or with a different message, but it's the same kind of content formula. Something I always think about is that, like, as a creator, you might have an idea to do something like that. Something creative, the hide and seek thing or anything, right? You do something creative, you do it once, it doesn't take off, so you never do it again. And then it never gets traction because you never gave it chance to get traction. Sometimes if you have a video formula idea, you might have to do it 100 times. And then it's that 100th time where it really takes off, but you're slowly building, you're slowly building, you're slowly building, and then it finally takes off. I watched this one creator. Actually, I have no idea. I should go look and see like how, if ever, she's planning on monetizing. She watches through, like, on TikTok when people are like, they're at like a party, they're at a potluck, and they're like, my name is Sarah, and I brought the deviled eggs.
Oh,
And they're
yeah.
like, my name is, those.
Uh-huh.
Well, she takes those videos and gives people, like, she judges them based on what they've brought. And she just does it in this very funny way where she gives them like really funny, weird punishments if they bring something bad, or she gives them something funny and good if they bring something good. And every video is that formula. She's watching and she's reacting and she's judging everybody for what they're bringing. And it's absolutely hilarious. Every video is the same. I don't know how many she did before she took off, right? But she did that over and over and over again. I think sometimes like we try something, it doesn't work, and we just change and we change and we change and we stay in our comfort zone instead of really being surprising and just believing in our content formula. And instead of like completely changing, just tweaking, just changing the hook, just changing the content, just changing the hashtags or the captions or something like that, but sticking to your formula.
Yeah. Next week, I'll talk about the Mercedes. Have you seen the like Batty and a Benz series with this Mercedes dealership?
I have them.
Okay, we'll talk about that next weekend because I love it. And it's so great. Again, it's like it's creating a personal brand around something that isn't technically personal. Like Mercedes is an international company. It's huge. But this particular dealership has created a personal brand and identity around their local dealership and the type of person that they're looking to attract. It's so specific. It's so on point, and I friggin' love it. So we'll talk about that next week. But dealerships as a whole, I've been noticing, have been creating content that I just think is hilarious. And for example, there have been a couple like this where it's like, text on screen of like, okay, we got to bring in new customers. And they're like, enough said, or like me. And then it's these guys who are not, again, just like normal guys in the back of the truck, like the truck bed comes down, there's a chair, and they've got like this Beyonce song, and then they start like dancing or like doing a dance, around the chair. And they have like competition things or they have something going on. I just think that marketing, like social media marketing right now has become so clever and funny. And I think the people who are going to win and drive people to their location of business are people who are embracing that and having fun and being entertaining and starting conversations and speaking to their person and being relatable. It's, again, like the consumer has never been more informed than they are today. So you don't have to try to trick them. You don't have to try to explain everything in one go. You don't even have to, again, like in this content, you're not even talking about the dang truck. You're just showing the truck in action, or you're just demonstrating in a way that makes sense, or like going for a test drive and like the salesperson is like freaked out in the passenger seat while the other person is using it, but you're still talking about the features of the vehicle, but it's just like this entertaining format. And I just think that, again, we're headed in that direction. There is no more just like, hey, welcome to my dealership. Like, we have these types of cars available and you can get these types of things. That type of content isn't going to go anywhere. There's zero distribution to it. And so there's no point behind it anymore.
Yeah, it's gone and it's over. And in some ways, whenever those shifts happen, that's someone else's opportunity to gain market share.
Yeah.
So when there's a shift, the people who go there will win. So keep an eye on it. That's what we're here for. That's why you should follow us, because we're going to tell you what's happening. So you don't have to do everything we say, but when something speaks to you and connects to you, you say, okay, I'm going to jump on that. I'm going to do that. And that's when you can see that growth in your business. Now, one thing that we promised last week we would talk about today are subscription boxes. So we briefly brought up subscription boxes and how we felt about them. I'd love to know, have you used any subscription boxes, Michelle?
I definitely get subscriptions. We have had subscription boxes in the past when it comes to food. But I haven't personally gotten any other level of like subscription box.
Yeah. I've used a couple. Oh, my mic just fell over. Woo! I've used a couple. We did HelloFresh for a while, which my husband didn't like because the protein sizes weren't enough, and he was always like, "This isn't enough protein." But we did HelloFresh for a while, which was super convenient for cooking, meal planning, all of that. I currently do Stitch Fix because I do not have the time to like go shopping or think about things, and that's really cool. And I've used a couple others, like I've tried a few others, but they're often a very super convenient way to get products, to get the things that you need and all of that. What's really surprising to me is the subscription box industry currently is worth about $40 billion.
Yeah.
$40 billion. And it's projected by 2033 to be at, I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget, $113 billion by 2033. So that's the projection of where people think subscription boxes as a model will be going in the market.
Yeah, I think so. Subscription boxes are incredibly interesting. What spurred, I think, part of this conversation for me is I read this on the Hustle HubSpot Media. I get their emails and read this on one of their blogs recently. There's a bakery called, I swear to God, there's a freaking fly around me and it's driving me bonkers. I cannot.
This episode
Oh
is
my God.
having this moment.
It gets me every time. I want them gone. Okay. Wild Grain is a subscription delivery service for baked goods. They do 31 million in annual revenue. And they started in 2020. 12 pastries. Every single month you get to pick your pastries. The pastries come half or frozen, par baked, so you don't have to bake them for that long. And they do 31 million in annual revenue. Now, subscription boxes like ButcherBox, you're getting meat delivered. There's Above the Bar, which is a mocktail company. This is like my industry, so I see them and pay attention to them. So they do different drink options and recipes every single month that you can get. Subscription boxes can be wearable, clothes, those types of things. Consumables are good, right? Because you want people to get through them. Something that is more like their self-care boxes for sure out there. I know.
And
makeup, that kind of thing. But you want to think of something that can be consumed rather fast, right? Like pastries. I can eat 12 pastries in a week.
In a day.
If I could. Actually, Jeremy, my husband, I got him a couple books for his birthday from this creator who is phenomenal, the Loopy Whisk. She does baking, like science stuff, but she really specializes in like vegan, gluten-free, like alternative options. And I'm gluten-free and dairy-free. So hubby has been making some different gluten-free things. He's about to make me gluten-free cinnamon rolls. So yes, we can eat serious baked goods here. But the subscription box thing is really smart. You're getting people on a recurring revenue model. And if it's not going to be a subscription service in terms of like SaaS, software as a service, or some type of like, again, entertainment, you've got Spotify, you've got Netflix, you've got like, that's like money. But if you're looking at delivering some type of e-commerce, some type of physical product, a consumable, I think subscription is a really, really great way to go.
Yeah, and it solves so many problems, I think, both for the consumer and for the business, right? So, like, there's, like, the level of as the consumer, for someone like me, I don't have a lot of time to shop, plan, do those things. So, getting some of the things I need on a recurring basis is super, super helpful, and having it in an app and being able to make adjustments and all of that is super convenient. And there's all kinds. There's something for everyone, which is really cool. From a business perspective, building that recurring revenue and finding ways to keep customers, surprise and delight customers, in some ways like lock them in, right? Like they're in there. They're going to buy from you now every month. You're part of their routine is huge. The other thing that's really important here to note when it comes to subscription boxes is from a company valuation standpoint. So if you're looking to sell your company or looking to leverage like borrowing on your company to grow other things, from that standpoint, that puts you in a really good position to have a higher valuation of your business. So a lot of times when you do company evaluations, there's multipliers that look at different things to decide what your actual company value is. And some of those multipliers are multiplied by 2 to 3 times when actually calculating your company valuations, when that's a recurring revenue basis. So if you want to sell, if you need to borrow against your company's value to grow and expand, that really, really helps. Another thing too that I think people don't think about in a lot of these recurring models, companies use, if you're in a subscription-based model, companies use that money to invest. So this isn't a subscription model as an example, but Starbucks as an example. When you use their app and you load money onto your app, say you have $20 to buy Starbucks on that. Starbucks takes that $20, invests it to make money on your money, and then when you use that money, it then gets recognized, right? So it's kind of like a complicated financial puzzle. Those businesses oftentimes, if you're paying a monthly subscription fee, they technically don't recognize they've used that money until they've sent you the product. So there's this window of time where they have your money to invest it, which is like wild to think about. But that's what a lot of these businesses do when they're getting that recurring revenue. They are investing it until it gets spent. And it's a really smart way for them to make money and continue to grow as a business. So there's lots of benefits to coming up with some sort of subscription-based part of your business, even if it is digital, right? If it's physical products or digital products or something, having that recurring revenue model can be really good for your customers to like give them what they need in a very convenient way, and can be good for you for your business stability and valuation.
Absolutely. So keep in mind, who are you talking to? Think about the different ways that you can serve that person and communicate. Look to other examples of what's happening. Get inspiration, get motivated by what's happening in content creation and marketing as a whole. And remember to align like your values, type of person that you are, and bring that into your personal brand, you know?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Click Tease. We covered some really great topics that I think will get you ready for the holiday season with your marketing branding needs. Make sure you like this episode, subscribe, share it with a friend who could use it. And if you haven't already, check the show notes and get to our Substack. If you subscribe there, we send a weekly update that's a digest of all the topics that we've covered that give you super actionable things that you can apply to your business this week.